The year is 1943. You are part of a German squad sent to hold the beaches at Vietri. Aware that the British have already come ashore, your attached mortar battalion opens fire on their positions. As the sun disappears over the horizon, you hear a strange sound. Though you do not know it, you are hearing bagpipes, playing the March of the Cameron Men. As the song fades away, two men come sweeping into town, one brandishing a broadsword. Your whole unit has surrendered within just a few minutes, more than 40 men captured by just these two British commandos. The one with the bagpipes and broadsword later tells you his name, Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill. You've just become the newest in a long list of enemies defeated by Mad Jack. John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill was born on the 16th of September in 1906 in Colombo, then part of British Ceylon. His father, Alec Fleming Churchill, was a member of the British government in Ceylon at the time, though he lived there for less than a year. Jack's younger brother, Thomas Bell Lindsay Churchill, was born after the family moved back to England. They then spent 1910 to 1917 stationed in British Hong Kong, where Jack's youngest brother, Robert Alec Farquhar Churchill, was born, before returning again to England. Jack was educated at King William's College, a boarding school on the Isle of Man, after which he attended the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. He graduated at age 20 in 1926 and was stationed in Burma with the Manchester Regiment, where he learned bagpipes under the pipe major of the Cameron Highlanders and traveled around 1,500 miles, or 2,400 kilometers, across the Indian subcontinent on a motorcycle. After the Manchester Regiment was returned to England, Jack found military life to be boring and left to become an actor. He played roles in 2 movies and competed in archery competitions, coming 26th out of 37 competitors in the World Archery Championships. Just a few months later, he re-enlisted in the Manchester Regiment after the invasion of Poland and was sent to France with the BEF. Churchill was a part of the retreat to Dunkirk, and in a skirmish near L'Epinette, is said to have killed a German with his longbow, though he later recalled that his longbow had recently been crushed in a lorry, a truck for my Americans, so that claim is up for dispute. He is also said to have remarked to a general who had commented on his unorthodox weaponry that any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. It is also said that during this time Jack began giving his men the signal to attack by brandishing his broadsword and leading them into a charge waving it. After this, he was extracted back to England via Dunkirk. While in England, Churchill was recruited into the Commandos, where he became second in command of No. 2 Commando, a unit formed of roughly 450 elite soldiers, though the composition of the unit changed greatly throughout the years Mad Jack was a part of it. His first action as part of No. 2 Commando was Operation Archery, a raid including elements of numbers 2, 3, 4, and 6 Commando, a dozen Norwegians, a light cruiser, a handful of destroyers, and air support against the town of
Molde
in Nazi-occupied Norway. The goal was to disrupt production of and destroy stores of fish oil, which was used by the Germans to manufacture explosives. Mad Jack was noted to have been the first to leap from the landing craft, playing March of the Cameron Men on his bagpipes as the assault on the German positions began. The raid was a great success. Roughly 120 German defenders were killed, with about another 100 captured, and all goals achieved. The commandos suffered 22 deaths, with 57 wounded and 8 planes lost. Jack's next chance for some excitement came in July of 1943. Now commander of No. 2 Commando, he led his men in their beach assault at Catania, which turned out to be an uneventful landing, as the enemy had already abandoned all positions nearby. They waited in the area for about a month, and then were ordered to make a landing at Scaletta, south of Messina. This was a more exciting affair, as the retreating Germans were still in the area. No. 2 Commando engaged them throughout the 15th and 16th of August. After this fighting concluded, Jack and a handful of his officers hopped in a car and drove up to Messina, hoping to be the ones to capture the town, the last enemy position in Sicily, though they discovered that an American unit had already claimed the title hours before they arrived. Less than a month later, the men of No. 2 Commando received their new orders. They would be part of the landings at Salerno. Specifically, they were to land at Vietri sul Mare and secure the area. They made landfall at approximately 3:30 a.m. on September 9th, to no welcoming party. Not a single enemy to be found on the beaches or in the town of Vietri itself, finding only an unmanned battery of artillery. Soon the German garrison in the area became aware of their presence and began firing on them with both mortars and machine guns. And as I said in the beginning, this was quickly ended by Mad Jack and one of his corporals, who captured more than 40 men. For this, he received the Distinguished Service Order. The men of number 2 and number 41 commandos held this area throughout the night of the 10th. On the morning of the 11th, Jack was noted to have commented that he thought the commando had been efficient in its operations. Glowing praise, to be sure. After which, contact was made on the west with men of the U.S. Rangers. In the morning of the 13th, the commandos were engaged by the Germans in the village of Dragon, which Jack described in a few words, saying, "There has been a terrible battle at Dragon." After this action, they were moved to Salerno, now solidly in Allied hands, for a moment of respite. During this time, Jack was informed that it was his 37th birthday, to which he said, "Birthday? Yes, followed by loud words to the gathered men, "Get ready to move at a moment's notice." After which, he came back with their new orders. The men of number 2 and number 41 commando were to move to Mercatello and secure the valleys near the peak of Piegoliel, which they nicknamed the Pimple. Here, they captured and killed many more Germans until the evening of September 18th, when they were cycled out of frontline duty and sent back to Sicily for R&R. In January 1944, number 2 commando was sent to accept Joseph Tito and his partisans in Yugoslavia. The first group arrived on the island of Vis on January 16th, with the rest of the active duty men rallying soon after, though roughly half of their strength remained in Italy, new recruits and the assigned trainers, plus those few wounded. They stayed in this area for the next 6 months, working with the Yugoslavians to disrupt and harass the German garrisons in the area. One of my personal favorite tactics they used while in Yugoslavia was equipping the German-speaking men of number 2 commando with megaphones so they could yell at German garrisons during the night. On February 4th, an attack was organized against the town of Hvar by the bulk of the men, while Jack led an officer's reconnaissance, which included piracy, capturing the 17 Germans and all their food, who were sailing a supply boat to some unit nearby. On March 19th, 1944, number 2 Commando organized an assault of the village of Grohot, which had a 110-man German garrison. 6 were killed and the rest captured, with only 1 commando losing his life. By May 1944, many other British Army units had joined number 2 Commando on Vis, and when they asked Mad Jack to be included in the operations, he replied that there would be too many cooks. The big operation was finally planned. The men of number 2, 40, and 43 commandos, plus roughly 2,000 Yugoslav partisans, were led by Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill in an assault on German fortified mountains in the area. Nothing went as planned, and for the finale of the battle, Mad Jack played "Will Ye No Come Back Again" on his bagpipes at the peak of one of the mountains, with a gravely wounded Lieutenant Colonel Manners, commander of number 40 Commando, nearby. Jack was knocked unconscious by a German grenade and captured. Number 2 Commando was cycled back to Italy for R&R after this battle, as Jack Churchill, believed by the Germans to be a relative of Prime Minister of the UK Winston Churchill, was transported to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, just north of Berlin. After roughly a month interred in the camp, Churchill was able to escape and made his way to Rostock, where he was recaptured. After which, he was supposed to be transferred to a new jail in the Austrian Alps with other prominent prisoners, though he again escaped, after which he made his way south through the Brenner Pass, eventually reaching Verona, where he found an American armored unit. He was then to be transferred to Burma, where he would join another commando unit, but upon his arrival in India, he was informed that Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been leveled, and that the war was over, which is where we get his most famous quote, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. Hungry for more war, Jack qualified as a parachutist and transferred to the Seaforth Highlanders, seeing as the commandos were being disbanded. The Seaforth Highlanders were sent to Mandatory Palestine to keep Jewish-Arab tensions down. They had orders not to engage in combat with either side, which Churchill promptly ignored when the Arabs attacked the Hadassah medical convoy. He returned fire on the Arabs and attempted to help the convoy, which lost 77 out of the 79 Jewish doctors and nurses. He then helped organize the evacuation of the Hadassah Hospital. 700 people were safely evacuated. The rest of his military career was rather uneventful. Jack retired in 1959. He had 2 children, Malcolm John Leslie Churchill, who was born in 1942, and Rodney Alastair Gladstone Churchill, born in 1947. He passed in 1996 at 89 years old.